Back late. But I said I'd do this today, so I'm doing it. Before I gotta do my unexpected chore. We just went to the feed store today. Picked up the last batch of feed for the meat, chickens, and turkeys. Chickens are probably ready to go right about now, but I like to get them a little bigger. I don't want a little chicken snack. I want a mini chicken turkey dinner when I cook them, right? Anyways, we got a swing door with springs on the hinges that closes the door shut between the chickens and the turkeys, and it swings open to the turkeys. And I don't know what happened, but I guess one of those fat little pork chops stampeded through, and about 8 or 9 chickens were mixed in with the turkeys. Those turkeys murdered one, and there's 2 other ones in there with holes basically right through the back of their head, and they're just walking zombies. It's pretty disgusting. Those feathered dinosaurs, they're ruthless. So I guess what happened was the turkeys picked out a chicken and went for it, just kept pecking at it and murdered it, and they're trying to murder the other ones. Pretty creepy. Anyway, I'm going to dispatch the 2 that are wounded right now and process them so I don't lose them anyway. They're big enough for a chicken dinner for sure, but it's unfortunate. Unfortunate, and it is Thanksgiving Day today. So, inside the house is chaos. Outside the house is a better place for me. What do we got for news? Not much new news, except I got some exciting news for me. It was a little late because I've been home late and everything's late and everything's unorganized and out of touch with many people. And I ran it by Sarah real quick last minute, and we sent off. I was hoping we weren't too late. We sent an invite for turkey dinner for Thanksgiving dinner tonight. We have our last turkey from last year, which is 24 pounds, and I invited my superhero First Nations ladies. And they said yes, and they're coming for dinner. Yes. I said, bring whoever you want. I'm coming to pick you up, load up the frickin' vehicle with whoever you got. Let's eat. So that's good news. That's what we're doing tonight. In the meantime, I'm taking a minute out before I get covered in chicken feathers and blood to get more voices heard. Listen to this. This is titled 2 Experiences I Have Had. Dear sir, I'm not sure how to do this, so I'll just get to it. My name is Warren Behringer, 53 years old, former military, Army. During the summer of '72, I was 3.5 years old, living in a small farm in southeast Louisiana. Too young to have a workload of chores yet. So I spent my days freely playing outside, drawing and learning how to read. I have an older brother, and at this time we had a bunk bed to which I slept up top and he on the bottom. The bed was in a corner of the room, which was on the corner of the house, with a window at the foot of the bed at the right and another at the head of the bed on the left. One night I had an experience I'll never forget. I used to talk to what my parents called imaginary friends, although they were quite real to me. One night I woke to a voice calling my name. It was my imaginary friend named George. He wanted me to come out and play. So I crawled to the foot of the bed and looked out the window as he urged me to come and play, and this I will never forget. I climbed over the top rail of the footboard, and while standing there, I unlocked the window while standing on the ladder of the bed. At this point, the window flew open, and 3, quote, white wolves, end quote, jumped up and tried to grab me. I began screaming in terror as I held onto the ladder, as I kicked and screamed for my mother and father for help. I guess it wasn't too long before there was a flash of light all around me, and I woke up hanging from the ladder by my 2 hands. I looked to my right to see my parents standing in the door motionless for what seemed like an eternity. Eventually my mother snapped out of what had to be a trance of some kind and helped me back into the bed, then closed the window. I fell asleep pretty quick considering what had just taken place. The next morning I got up to find out that my parents had no memory of what had happened. And my brother slept through the whole thing. I was about to write this whole thing off as a dream, as I was assured by my mother that is what really happened, until a little later that morning I actually found the window screen from that window about 15 feet away under some bushes. Not only that, but the ground underneath that window was all rutted up. I was soon distracted by something like little kids can be. I didn't think about it ever again until about 16 years later. That is frickin' creepy. The next incident happened around 11 years later when I was 14 years old. My parents had just recently divorced, and I was on a trip with my mother and the man that would eventually become my stepfather. We were traveling to see his relatives in an area of southwest Gainesville, Florida. It was a far place to drive, and there wasn't much to see except trees and the occasional dirt road. We were in some real country. We finally arrived to what could only remind me of the set of the Waltons. The house is pretty much the same, and I was thankful that it had running water and electricity. Don't get me wrong, it was a very nice place, just old and simple. The next evening, one of my stepfather's cousins came over to visit, do some work in the garden, and to help shell peas and snap some beans that we had harvested earlier. After dinner, he invited me to go hunting. I would know nothing better to do. I said yes. He went home, came back around 10 p.m., and we set off on foot. The weather was perfect. The full moon was brilliant, without a cloud in the sky. You could see extremely well, so much so that we didn't need our flashlights. We must have walked about a mile, going through several gated pastures and various trails, all the while maintaining noise discipline and keeping to the edge of the tree line in the shadows as we walked. We climbed another fence and started to walk forward again when we came to another large pasture. It was positioned to us as a large rectangle, and we were at the bottom portion in the right-hand corner, and we both stopped. We needed to go across the pasture, but I was suddenly filled with dread inside, although I had no idea why. We stood there for a couple of minutes just staring at the woods about 150 yards away on the other side of the pasture. It felt as if something was over there watching us, and so I suggested that we circumvent the pasture by turning left and staying in the shadows. I would add approximately 500 yards to our walk, but it was a lot better than walking out in the open, I surmised, and he agreed. We started walking again, and it didn't go but maybe 20 yards when he stopped. I was within arm's length away from him now, although I honestly do not recall doing so on purpose. He turned and whispered, "Did I hear that?" I said no. He responded, "Exactly." It's only then that I noticed no sound at all. The hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I was getting a strong message in my mind to turn around immediately and go back. So he starts to walk again with me right behind him, when suddenly a very loud and long wail came across the pasture that I've never heard before, that lasted for 5 to 10 seconds. Well, we both froze as if we had ice water in our veins. I was literally freezing and shaking all over. I was scared like never before in my life, before or afterwards. It was at this point and time that without saying anything to each other, we both decided that it was past our bedtime, that we should be sleeping in our own beds, that we should be anywhere but where we were standing. And so before I realized what was happening, we were already crossing the fence and headed back quickly. We heard some thrashing in the woods behind us, but we didn't look back. We didn't run. We walked viciously. But it wasn't until we made it to within eyesight of the house that the nighttime noises came back and the feeling of being watched had passed. Of course, I didn't know what had just happened, and when we got in the house, he went off excitedly telling the story. I didn't say anything. I just stood there wide-eyed and nodding in agreement to what he said. Naturally, you can guess the reception of the story was poor and actually insulting. Everybody had a good laugh at our expense. The cousin was so mad that he issued a profanity and stormed out of the house, got on his bike, and drove home in the dark. I didn't go to sleep until the sun came up, and we were driving back home to Louisiana. It was 5 years after the second experience. I was in the Army and reading anything I could find out about Bigfoot when I was in a bookstore, and I saw something that changed my life. And as I was glancing around, I saw a book by Whitley Strieber titled Communion. I pulled it off the shelf, and when I turned the book, I see its cover. I froze in shock. Staring back at me was one of the 3 white wolves that had tried to drag me from my bed when I was a small child. Everything I have said in the email about is 100% factual and true. I don't remember the name of my stepfather's cousin, and I doubt he even remembers me. But if he is still with us on this planet, I am positive he remembers and may have had other run-ins or encounters. I've only recently discovered your podcast and will continue to search for them on YouTube. I finally decided to write to you after hearing all the stories from people you have read, and the fact it is liberating in the hope that maybe someday somebody will understand and acknowledge what I experienced. You can use my name if you like. I do not have anything to hide or be afraid of. Thank you for your time. May God bless you and yours. Warren Beringer. I was at a bookstore and happened to glance at a book on a pedestal being advertised as a New York Times bestseller. The book was written by Whitley Strieber, and the title was Communion. On the cover was a close-up of an alien face, but all I saw was the face of a white wolf. Wow, that's something else. And that sounds freaking alarming. So there you go, you guys. If anybody has had something similar go down and you're too nervous to talk about it, email me up and let it rip. All right? Let it rip. We're here. Nothing is crazy today, I'll tell you what. Nothing. Thanks for writing that in, man. Took some guts and we're here. And if you find out anything else that'll help somebody, email it to me, all right? This is titled Encounter in Childhood Experience. Dear Steve, I'm interested in these creatures since I was young. After listening to many others' encounters, I can see that I have had similar experiences, but still mine was unique in its own special way. When I was very young, my father had taken me hunting for rabbits at the time. We lived in south central Illinois. We were hunting along my great-aunt's property and had the Kaskaskia River run through it. I remember this for two reasons. First, thus was my first rabbit that I shot on my own. Second was seeing large footprints alongside the field where we hunted. I hollered over for my dad to look at what I had found. He was unimpressed. Later on, I would constantly ask my dad who would have made those bare footprints in the mud in late fall in Illinois alongside riverbanks and cornfield. Now, if this was the whole story, I wouldn't be emailing you. After that, during my whole time growing up while living in the country about 2 miles from where we hunted, I would have these repeated nightmares of this black face waking me up at night looking in my bedroom window and screaming. We lived there until I was 16. Then we moved to the city. I had many experiences of these nightmares and it always happened the same way. We lived in a mobile home and my bedroom window was approximately 6 feet to the base of the window. And I always remembered the creature, as I called it, looking down on me in my room. The worst part was my bed was under the window and my parents wouldn't let me move my bed away from it. That sucks. Anyways, just another story. I'm glad now I'm free, and even if my parents didn't believe me, I know I wasn't crazy. You can use my name, John Davis. John, you're not crazy. You're surrounded by similar people who have witnessed shit that they didn't want to, and were too nervous to share like you, but they did anyway. That's why we're here. I hope me sharing that to everyone for you help, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate it all. Next one is titled Spacecraft. It's endless. Email after frickin' email of honest people coming here to share with honest people. It was 1971 and I was only 11 years old and I'm 61 now. I've only shared this with my mom when I was 35, just this year with a friend who I trust. I love your channel. I grew up on a 360-acre ranch. Big picture windows, front and back. At this time, cattle were being found dead everywhere. Nobody knew why. Drained of blood. Since we raised beef cattle, it was a big concern. Talked about it a lot. I was home alone one day, and it was 2 p.m. I was happy my parents left me home by myself. I was looking out the back picture window, and 200 or less off to the left of our biggest corral, where we gathered cattle to run through a chute for shots, meds, and whatever, etc. There was a metal gate that led into one of our biggest fields. There it was, like it landed there waiting for the gate to open. I couldn't stop looking at it. And just as I was going to go check it out, everything inside me, or like God was speaking, to get low, get to my room, and lay on the floor. I was a tomboy growing up, not much scared me, but to this day, I'll never forget that fear. I didn't come out of my room until I heard everyone come home. And this was in Aurora, Montana. I remember many strange things were happening back then, and that's when I knew that this was not from here, our planet. With that being said, I believe some of the UFOs seen aren't from outer space, but ones we have copied their technology. That's not as interesting as the stories you read. This was something I needed to share with others who have had some strange things. I believe Bigfoot is out there without a doubt, and after listening to you, they're good and bad ones. I believe that to be true, and when it comes to aliens too. Keep sharing. Billie Jean Gibson. P.S. I don't care if anyone believes this because I know what happened. And when I finally told my mom, she believed me, but I don't know if she would have then. Well, that's great news that she believed you. It's about time. It's like you were kind of bored that day. Woke up in the morning and thought, gee, I wonder what I should frickin' tell everybody because I'm so bored and I'm looking for some of that great attention you get when you see something that you normally get insulted or laughed at for, right? Said no one. I hope that helped you out sharing that too. I might be reading in a little bit of a rush, but I got those chickens to take care of and I have to go pick up the ladies and bring them home for turkey. I want to get this done. Yeah, what do we got here? Ooh, that's a book. Should I go for it? All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. It's a long one. And then I'm definitely going to have to go. At least I got one done today, right? 2 sightings in Missouri, Ozark Mountain with incident between over 35 plus years. Hello, Steve. I enjoy your videos. Thank you for giving people like us a place to talk about them. My story took over 35 years to unfold, and I apologize for the length, but feel that all the parts of my story are very relevant to the subject of all beings, Bigfoot. For the longest time, I couldn't decide if I should report this sighting or not. The reason being is, I'm the once young 11-year-old boy from the 1985 Class A sighting in Ozark County, Missouri that reported that sighting 20 plus years ago in the Finding Bullshit website. Like I said, it was the when I added in the Finding Bullshit, not him. Like I said, it was the winter of 85 and I was sitting in the back seat of my aunt and uncle's car coming home from a community get-together / music party. In the late hours, around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m., my relatives lived about 2 miles down a country road. Right before the entrance to the driveway was an old dry bed creek that would flood whenever it rained heavy. So it was always full of large rocks and always bumpy as it did not have a cement slab to drive over it. Directly to the right of the dry creek was a driveway from an old farmer that was well known in the community and had built the house sometime in the 30s to 40s. It had been abandoned for years, but the house remained in relative good condition. Me and a friend had been in the home earlier that year in the summer. In the living room, there was a very large pile of leaves, all piled up in the corner of the room. Me and my friend assumed because the window was broken out, the wind had blown the leaves into the house. We went on about our day with nothing special happening. Well, fast forward to winter. I'm sitting in the back seat with my aunt and uncle's oldest son, that's about 5 years old. He sat behind his father and I behind my aunt, and she was holding her newborn son that was born in August. Immediately to the right of the car, as my uncle slowed down to cross the dry creek bed, the old driveway to the old abandoned farmhouse was to our right, just a few feet from the dry creek. As my uncle slowed the car to a slow crawl, we see something standing at the edge of the road in the driveway that acts like it wants to cross the road, but almost doesn't. As we notice it, short step itself as it decided to cross anyway, as if to say, well, they've already seen me now. It was approximately 8 feet tall, bright red hair, very long arms, looked almost longer than its legs. No hair on the face or on the hands. As it passed in front of the car, it turned its head as if to nod to us, saying, yes, I see you and you see me. Let me cross the road and I'll go on my way, and we leave each other alone. My uncle turned the car's headlights slightly to the left, and we could see it staying to the right side of the creek bed. My uncle's yard had been eroded from flooding, and the yard was probably 6 foot from the creek bed with a barbed wire fence serving as a boundary. If I were to have tried to climb up into that yard that way, I'd have to have had at least a couple of feet to get a foothold to pull myself up. I know because I tried to climb into the yard that way before. Anyway, we see this Bigfoot in one fail swoop jump up onto the yard over the fence. And it wasn't running, but it was taking a wasn't taking a slow troll either. It walked through the yard, past the house, up the hill, in the yard, and went straight to the gate that led into the pasture, and from what we could see, jumped the gate in one motion and was gone. I was scared to death, to say the least. The only other time I grew concerned was when I was in the woods at my home with my parents. I built some teepees and a log cabin to hang out in, as the woods was my playground growing up. One day while I was clearing some brush, I could hear something walking as I was walking. When I stopped, it stopped. I did this action about 3 times, but on the 4th time when I stopped, it kept walking. What caused me to worry was I could hear it getting closer and closer, but I could see nothing. I'd clear brush out in those woods, and from all the trees at height as 6 to 7 foot, and cut all the underbrush, rose brushes, etc. So, visibility should not have been an issue, and where my little hideouts were built was along an old wood-cutting road, which I'd kept clear as well. However, I could never see what was walking closer and faster to me and my cousin. The funny thing is this was the cousin that sat in the back seat with me during my first Bigfoot encounter. I told him to run, and I would stay to fend off whatever was almost upon us. After I saw my younger cousin getting close to the yard, I held my hatchet and began to run for my life. I quickly caught my cousin, and without missing a beat, I scooped him up, carrying him the rest of the way. I yelled into the woods once safely in my yard, as if to say to whomever was in the woods, trying to scare me and my little cousin, that I was not scared. I was going through puberty at this point, so I was full of piss and vinegar, like most country boys at that age. My cousin was my junior by 6.5 years, and I was beginning to work out hauling hay. I read this one, but I'm so far in, I'm going to keep going. Mowing yards and lifting weights. I was almost certain had the fight been fair, I could have defended myself and my cousin, but I didn't really want to if I didn't have to. Seeing one Bigfoot is rare, but to have seen 2, I would imagine, is unheard of. Since '85, I've grown up and married for 27 plus years, father of 3 sons, and now grandfather. I, with my parents, moved from north from Ozark County, where my first sighting took place, to the adjoining county of Douglas just before my 14th birthday. I returned to Ozark County to begin my family, and about 20 years ago moved back to Douglas County, where I currently reside west of Ava, Missouri. My wife and I purchased a nice sizable tract of land, less than 0.8 of a mile, near a small river/large creek with good fishing, so wildlife is abundant. One day, late spring, early summer 2015, my oldest son had just graduated from high school the year prior and was working a day job, but still lived with his mother and I, along with his 2 younger brothers. However, on this day, it was my son and I at home on the afternoon around 4 to 5 p.m. at the latest. My son, unfortunately, had become a smoker. And while he's an adult, about 19 years of age, we didn't allow him to smoke in the house. I've always had a very close relationship to my sons and have always enjoyed long conversations about various things. As we were talking about what I do not remember, my son said he was going to smoke. I stood up and walked with him as he opened the front door, venting tobacco smoke. We were both positioned to see straight across the yard toward a small dry branch at the edge of my yard. A few years back, a female black bear with 2 cubs, less than a quarter mile from our house, had been seen in a tree in the parking lot of an old abandoned church with several big oak trees. We've been on the lookout for possible black bear sightings, as they are still somewhat rare. Hadn't seen one, or at least that's what we initially thought. My son opened the door and we both saw, almost instantaneously, a black figure standing on 2 legs looking straight at the house. Just as we saw it saw us and squatted in a downward movement, still on 2 legs. My son said, "Dad, is that a bear?" When he said that, the black animal turned, still on 2 legs, and ran in a southwesterly direction from our house. I remember thinking it should go down on all 4s, as I was thinking black bear as well, but it never did, as long as we could see it. My son, almost in shock, said, "Dad, was that what I think it was?" I said I thought black bear too at first, but when it ran away, it never went to 4 legs. I pointed out that it stayed upright and ran away on 2 legs. My son said that he noticed it never went on to all 4s as well, and stated rhetorically, "Bears don't run on 2 legs, do they?" I told him no, they don't. He then looks at me with bewilderment, and I could see he was coming to the same conclusion as was I. He had just seen a black-haired Bigfoot. We had just seen a black-haired Bigfoot. It looked approximately 6 foot tall, maybe 400 plus pounds. We talked amongst ourselves for a bit on what we just seen and how we couldn't believe what had just happened. I told my wife that our son and I had seen that day. The next day I decided to walk out to where it was standing to look for tracks or sign. Stepping down into the little dry branch, I could see a smeared footprint in very damp, almost wet soil. Then turned where it appeared to be. Seeing it, had a clear view of our home based upon where it had stood when I saw it. There was a perfect little rectangular space in which you could view my home unobstructed, and I saw a green branch that had been pinched cleanly off from an overhanging branch and lay perfectly on the branch below. I placed the branch that was clearly connected to the tree it had grown from. It was the one branch that would have affected a perfect view of our home. After several months without further incident, I received a phone call from my cousin that lived approximately 6 miles due west of us. Our highway is a small 2-lane road that reads pavement ends, and it turns into a gravel road. If you travel the road all the way, it takes you to the similar highway, and my cousin lives southwest of the intersection of said gravel road and small 2-lane highway. Strangely enough, my cousin I was talking with was in the car back in 1985 during my first encounter with a Bigfoot. He sent me some pictures on his cell phone. He raised fighting chickens and had a Great Pyrenees dog to protect them from predators. It just snowed several inches, approximately 8 to 10 inches, throughout the night. My cousin went outside to feed and water his chickens, but as he walked closer to where his roosters were staked to the ground, he saw a leg attached to the lead rope, but no rooster. As he looked further, some had been ripped out of the ground, which were staked with concrete, but pulled freely and thrown out into the pasture that was around his yard. He was very puzzled, to say the least. He then went to the chicken coop to feed and water his hens. Upon entering the coop, he looked upon a macabre scene. All his hens had been savagely killed. None of them had been eaten, only killed, torn to pieces. Some ripped in half, but all were dead. As he left the coop, he called for his dog, but to no avail. He then looked for his dog, a Great Pyrenees, and found her dead. He went back inside and called the Missouri Department of Conservation. Before the agent arrived, he went back outside, and there he saw prints as if someone was walking barefoot in the snow across his yard by the dead chickens, only to cross the fence, and the said tracks just disappeared. Upon the conservation agent's arrival, they began to discuss what could have killed his flock of birds. The agent said it appeared as if this dog had been grabbed by her tail or back legs and swung back and forth on the ground like a rag doll, completely breaking and smashing almost every bone in the dog's body. What a prick. The agent placed trail cameras in an attempt to catch what possibly was responsible for the death of my cousin's entire flock of chickens and his dog. After 2 weeks, the cameras failed to capture anything that could have possibly done the deed. He told my cousin that the only thing he could think of that made said tracks was a large primate or a person with extremely large feet, but couldn't reconcile why someone would do it barefoot. He also said there was another explanation, but he couldn't say that was what it was, as it has not been proven to exist by science. Bigfoot. What I find to be the most curious is when I had my first sighting in '85, I was with my aunt, uncle, and their oldest son that was sitting in the back with me. My aunt was in the front holding a newborn, 3 to 4 months old son. That baby is the cousin referred to in my account of said events, now a grown man. Fast forward 2015, 2016, then approximately 2 months later, upon returning home approximately at 9:10 p.m., my wife and I turned off the vehicle and exited the truck. Almost instantly, after shutting the doors, we heard a loud call coming from the woods, from something I've never heard in the Missouri woods before. My wife asked me immediately what was that. I simply told her, "You know what it was." She ran into the house. A couple months passed, and before going to bed, my wife went outside to check on the chickens and make sure they were all in the coop. When she turned the doorknob and opened the door, she witnessed the same macabre scene my cousin had experienced months earlier. She came back in the house and said, "Dear, I don't know how to say this, but all the chickens are dead." Of course, my response was, "What?" I immediately put on my shoes, grabbed a flashlight and my sidearm, went outside to investigate it for myself. I turned the knob to the door on the coop, opening the door. The chickens were indeed dead, ripped to pieces, ripped in half. A horrible death for all my birds. However, not one bird had been eaten, just as the event in my cousin's home. Any typical known predator here in Missouri would have at least eaten some or a great portion of the dead birds. I then asked if the door had been closed properly. My wife said yes. I had to turn the knob to open the door. I did an inspection of the coop and running area for holes in the wire or for holes dug underneath by a predator to gain entry into the coop and found nothing. Two things struck me about the incident. One was whatever killed my chickens could open a door and by default had to have opposable thumbs. So that ruled out natural predators in my mind. Number two. Second was where I had put the recently purchased pre-assembled chicken coop. I had the delivery man place it at the edge of my yard exactly where I and my eldest son had seen what I believed to be a juvenile 6-foot-tall solid black Bigfoot looking directly at my house. Then lastly, about 1 month later, we let our female English bulldog outside use the restroom. I heard her growling and barking at something which was uncommon for her. She was a very gentle-natured dog, and when she barked at something outside, it usually meant there was indeed something outside in the yard. However, all at once she fell silent. My wife went to the door to let her back in. She didn't come back to the porch, despite repeated calls for her. Still no dog. Then my wife saw her through the ambient light from the lights in the said porch in the driveway, and she wasn't moving. Put on my shoes, grabbed my flashlight, my sidearm, went to investigate. My 2-year-old healthy English bulldog lay dead in the driveway. As I was preparing to bury her, I looked at her and could see a massive swollen area on the left side of her head, upon where it looked as if she had received a blow so hard in the head it killed her almost instantly. Where the suspected blow had taken place, it had swollen and began to turn dark shades of purple. From feeling my dog's face, it was pliable, feeling as if her bones on that side of her skull had been broken. She had no other marks on the rest of her body. I've had chickens since, and until recently, no mass killings by predators until just a week ago. As for dogs that I allow to spend any significant time outside, it's not without supervision. 2 sightings of a Bigfoot within a 35-year span. According to Bigfoot research and what I have seen on television, podcasts, YouTube, and read in countless eyewitness accounts, etc., it is extremely rare to see a Bigfoot, let alone 2 distinctly different individuals, is it not? Quick interruption. It's quite common for people who have seen them once to see them more times. Excuse me. I'd rather have won the lottery twice if I had to pick a rare event to participate in. I've had no further incidents since. Just reading your comments below and watching your videos over the last couple months, I now realize why me and my cousin playing paintball during my high school years would come to haunt me to this very day. We'd put on our safety gear and I'd hit my head on the ductwork in his basement, making the top of my head very sore. I chose not to wear a hat. My cousin, however, did wear a hat that day as we're walking into the woods to start our game of Capture the Fort. After the game was over, having never actually been together during the match, I saw him wearing the ball cap and aiming at it while he was on his designated territory. Then he makes a break for the fort. He then sees me with the hat on, and he's using it to take aim at me. We meet up and walk the last 56 yards out of the woods together. Then we stop before leaving the woods. At the pasture edge, we stopped together for a drink of water and to rest a moment, as it was summertime and hot. And while I wore protective face gear, I did not wear a hat. However, I take my hat off to wipe the sweat from my forehead and look at my forearm to see how hot it truly was. I see my right hand holding the hat. I turn to my cousin. Dude, what am I doing with your hat? He looks at me and says, that's your hat, man. He reached for his head as if to find his hat. Wait, I didn't wear a hat today. I told him he wore it out here, and I saw him on the other side of the creek wearing it, and it gave his location away. I started shooting paintballs at him because I could see the hat. Oh yeah, you're right, I was wearing that hat. How'd you get it? I reminded him about hitting my head on the ductwork in the basement. I wasn't wearing a hat today. He's like, man, when I was in the fort, I saw you wearing that hat. The gold on it gave your position away. It's then I remembered he wasn't wearing the hat when he was in the fort/deer hut. We both asked each other, how do we come together without remembering it, and switch the hat? My cousin was asking himself, why don't I remember wearing it out here? I don't know how I'd gotten it since we've never crossed our respective paintball boundaries during the match. He came up with the conclusion that we may have had collective amnesia or something, and that's why we didn't remember switching it. He actually was talking about special forces as he was considering joining the Army within the next year and a half after high school, and is talking about guys that get such intense training that they could have been in the trees and switched the hat between us. But that theory didn't take long to be shoved aside, as why would highly trained military personnel be in our woods switching our hat back and forth for fun? We didn't even live next to an army base at least 200 miles away. As we pondered how the hat switched heads, we also discovered, due to the fact we would only take so long to play a match, then we were going to town that evening to cruise for the ladies, LOL. But we'd lost, at best, guess, about 15 to 20 minutes. So then we thought we had experienced collective amnesia and lost time during the collective event and switched the hat between us. Does any of that story sound logical? No. I've never been able to understand why the hat was clearly visible to each of us at different points within the paintball match, and how we'd lost 15 to 20 minutes of time without any memory of what happened in that time. He walked into the woods wearing the hat. I walked out of the woods wearing the hat, and we both lost 15 to 20 minutes. Never made sense. Probably never will. I never thought UFO were aliens. I just chalked it up to be a very strange but most likely an unexplainable event. Just not something we could explain. I'd be open to anyone's suggestions. This particular cousin never had a Bigfoot sighting. I had at that point, but it would be many more years before my next sighting. After my second sighting with my son, he told me, "Dad, I never doubted that you saw something when you were a kid, but I just never really thought a real Bigfoot. It's not that I didn't believe you, as you're one of the most honest men I know, and not because you're my dad, it's just because it's just how you are. I remember you telling me when you've seen one, you'll know it in an instant, and you'll never be the same, and you were right. I now know why you go into the woods with a rifle, pistol, and sometimes a second pistol, or a BUG, and a hog leg of a knife. I know why, when me and my brother got old enough, you taught us how to use a pistol so well, and started making us carry the exact same style setup you did. I'll never go into the woods again without a rifle, a pistol, and one big-ass knife. I'm going to teach the exact same thing you taught us to my boy as well. Anyone with thoughts, your advice, or suggestions will be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much, Steve. All the best to you and yours." There we go. We did it. Even though I'm pretty certain I read this one before, I don't mind reading it again, because there's, I think, today or tomorrow we're flipping 270,000 subscribers, and we're definitely not getting 270,000 hits on video, I don't think. I don't know. So, many people that haven't heard that just heard it. There you go. And you can email in and add to it, or comment in the comment section below to the person who emailed in if you got something to add to around that same area, maybe, right? Or maybe somebody had something similar happen with somebody or something messing with them by doing that. Screwing up your clothing, making you lose time. It's very frickin' eerie and odd. But anyway, excited for tonight. I wonder what new stories we're gonna hear tonight at the dinner table. It should be good. It's good just to visit. These are true kind souls coming over. I love having them in my life. Now, what was I else I gonna mention? I was gonna mention something. I was gonna mention trying to figure out different ways how I can motivate people to speak openly and motivate people to snap out of a trance in a way and make a difference. Because right now more than ever, every single one of you needs to make a difference, and I'm absolutely dead serious. All right? I like to think I am level-headed enough to possibly seek out information and knowledge, think about it rationally with an open mind, and accept what may be true or not. And when I am absolutely convinced something's true and I think it's important, I have to do my part, and I have to share it with as many people as I can. I have to. But anyway, here's a quick little thought. I'm sure everybody out there has possibly hired somebody to do some work from at one point or another, possibly, right? Or been a part of observing somebody, hiring somebody, a crew or a contractor to do some work. Now imagine if you had a contractor and you paid him a whole pile of money, and he promised to make your home better. Whatever project is going to be, you're paying somebody to make your home better for you and your wife and your kids, right? You're working your ass off to make that money, to pay the contractor, to ensure that your home is better. Follow me. Now, let's just say the contractor says, well, things are getting kind of shitty, and actually I need a little more of your money, which means you're going to have to work a little more, and I promise you, this is going to make your life way better. I've got this. Just trust me, I've got this. Just pay me some more money, okay? Oh, and I'm just going to give myself a little raise, too, out of my staff, but you don't have to worry about that. Just pay me some more money, work overtime, just do whatever it takes. Start working weekends, okay? And we're going to make this part of your home absolutely wicked for your wife and kids. So you pay them even more money. Now you got to take those extra shifts and you're working your frickin' ass off, but you paid them that extra money. You still don't have any extra money for yourself or your kids, but you paid the contractor more money, right? Oh shit, here he comes again. The project's not done. Actually, the quality of life is actually starting to slide south. It's getting a little shittier at home when it's not supposed to, because they already paid this prick a pile of money, right? You're working way more hours so that you can pay this asshole more money. And he promised to get the job done, and everything's going to be smooth, slick, and awesome for your wife and kids, right? Keep following me. Now, this is probably about the third time he's come knocking on the door for even more of your frickin' money. It's like you got any to give, right? You can't even barely afford to make your frickin' normal payments as is right now, let alone even thinking about going on a frickin' holiday, right? And he basically explains to you there's no way out of it. You have to give him more money. He needs more of your money still. And he promises your life is going to be way better. It's just this one more time. You got to give me more money, man. You just got to give me more money. And everything's going to be fine. Then, of course, you catch when the prick gave himself another raise again, right? Just the other month, he gave himself a raise. Meanwhile, the quality of your life sucks ass. Right? The quality of your life for you and your kids, the future is looking bleak now. This guy has screwed you over so bad. He's taken so much of your frickin' money and you trusted him to make sure that life was going to be absolutely stomping frickin' awesome. But instead, this guy took all your fucking money, gave himself a bunch of fat raises, and your quality of life actually got worse and worse. And your quality of life got worse and worse, to the point you're just sitting there with a glazed look over your face wondering, what the fuck just happened to me, man? What the hell? This dude just absolutely violated the shit out of me. Oh my God, I can't believe I was that stupid. Shit. Holy shit, he took up all of my money. Oh my God, I worked my ass off. And I still couldn't even afford Christmas presents for the kids or even to take them on their annual camping trip. I can't believe I got duped by this sleazy piece of shit. Right? Token helicopter. Whatever. I'll finish the story. The sucker's coming right over the house. We happened over the house a little while ago in the dark, and a helicopter pilot friend of ours said they're not supposed to be flying at nighttime, and next time it happens, flash a flashlight up and see if you can get the numbers off the side. And when I was away, Sarah did that, and I said it was low enough for the flashlight. She goes, yeah. But she couldn't see any numbers in the helicopter and took off, and it hasn't been back since. But we've together seen helicopters doing low grids in the valley right here up the river. Anyways, there goes the helicopter, but back to the story. So you would have thought your average rational thinking person, hardworking person, would have fired this prick ages ago, if not sued his ass off. Right? Because he basically just bent you over and screwed the shit out of your ass dry and got away with it. Right? So, today, that is going on with every single one of us. From the people who are in the positions of being called our leaders. And that is what they are doing to us today. And there's no better way for me to describe it. Now, the quality of life for all of us has been spiraling down. I went to the grocery store just now again. Multiple shelves are empty of shit nonstop still. They're actually starting to maneuver their shelves to make them look like they're more full, but they're missing a shitload of products. I went to another store, same deal. Went to another store, same deal. Shelves are empty, right? What else? We've got a shit pile of people that are unemployed. And now we are on the verge, the cusp of nuclear strikes. That's going on right now. For all you people who don't want to hear this shit, well, you're probably a part of the big part of the problem. You don't want to hear about it, you don't want to acknowledge it, you still don't want to, and you let it fester and grow, and here it is today, getting slapped in their faces. And I don't give a shit who I'm pissing off right now, I don't care. You need to say and do something. You all do. Period. There are some dark, filthy sons of bitches who have done what they're doing today in the past. There are numerous countries you can look at that are absolutely thrashed from war. And who started those wars? Do your homework. And right now, these psychopaths are attempting to ignite the first nuclear strike. And they are trying to ignite it. And sadly, it's the dirty, filthy pricks that are in the position to call themselves our leaders. That's who's guilty. And all of you are being duped. The majority of you are misinformed and misled. And you're not doing or saying anything. I am absolutely frustrated right now, and I know that my part that I can do right now is reach as many people as I can and share with them what I know, try to give them some kind of a slow drip of information, try to give different scenarios of what's really going on so you can wrap your noggin around it and get out of that trance that many of you have been put in, that trance of just going along with it. What's going on over there? Shit, I don't know. That's politics. I don't want to talk about politics. Like, fuck, it's politics. It's not politics. Right now, it's your quality of life, and it's getting absolutely trashed by dirty, filthy contractors who promised every single one of us a better life with all that money we've been giving them. Right? You give them 60% plus of your income. You give them to these people, and your quality of life is spiraling into the ground. That right there should be enough for you to get so frickin' fuming mad, smoke's coming out of your asshole, and to motivate you to get off of it and speak out loud, talk out loud about it, and get other people pissed off and strip these pricks of that power. All right? This isn't politics. This is fact, and this is your life and mine. So, do something. All right? It's serious now. It can't get any more serious than what it is right now. All right? And shame on you if you do not speak about it openly and pass the knowledge on to try to motivate your family or your neighbors, whoever. Talk about it. All right? There you go. There's my happy message for Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving Turkey Day. Now I'm going to go process those chickens, salvage that meat, get changed, and go pick up my superhero First Nations ladies and have them over for a frickin' awesome evening. Then I'm going to be back tomorrow, and I'm going to share more voices. Then I'm going to somehow try to figure out if I can come up with a fucking recipe to motivate people to make a difference and start talking. You better start talking. You bring this topic up tonight at that turkey dinner table, and you fill everybody in what's going on, all right? And make a difference. Do it. Have a great evening.